Hello and welcome, friends, to episode 4 of JoeShine's Let's Play Kerbal Space Program Career Mode. We've got a new rocket, using a bunch of our new pieces that we earned after the last flight, and so we're just gonna go. We need to get moving because we're going to the moon. Now, we're not gonna try and land on the moon. We're going to try and do a flyby, a free return trajectory, and we're going to incorporate a gravity assist in this. I'm just spinning all over the place. Let's see if I can adjust this. Now, I've got 4 of our brand new solid rocket boosters. And we've also got our new fins. We've got a lot of spinning happening here, and I'm not thrilled, but hopefully we'll be able to stop this once these burn out. Now, our main engine, there we go, was only burning at about a third of its total power. The reason was I wanted to save the majority of the fuel for later. But I wanted, well, that's kind of funny. I wanted the gimbaling effect of this engine to be able to help try and control it. That didn't go well. I've tried this, I've test flown this rocket a few times and never had a spin, but that's okay. Why not? We're doing fine. So, we're going to need to talk about what a gravity assist is, but to do that, let's skip ahead to this ship having put Hudson in orbit. Okay, so we're in orbit, and before we attempt to go directly to the moon, I want to do a test here. I saved the game, quick save, so when we're done with this, we're going to jump back, and it'll be alright. But what I want to illustrate is, I remember from previous tests that around the 40 to 42 range is where we're going to end up once we're done with our actual free return burn to go out to the moon and come back. But I wanted to illustrate what's going on here if we're not going to the moon. Using the same amount of fuel, what I've done is put this on an escape trajectory out of the Kerbal system. Like, we're leaving the planet at this point. And we're going into orbit around the sun. So, with fuel to spare, I could have stopped this probably around 50 units of fuel to go. I think, if I remember correctly, that was about when it happened. We can look back at the recording, but it doesn't matter because this is closer to the number, I think, where we're going to end up when we actually do the maneuver to get around the moon and come back. So, let's reload that from the quick save. And what was the point of that? We're going to be burning the same amount of fuel as that, but we're going to get a very different result. Why? The way that a gravity assist works, and I'm just going to get the ship in position to go around while we do this. A gravity assist takes advantage of the relationship, the interaction of the ship and a body that you're passing. The moon, which is going to be our target, the moon's gravity affects you as you're coming in and as you're going out. As you're approaching the moon, it is speeding you up. As you are flying away from the moon, it's acting as a drag, it's slowing you down. So how do we use this? Well, we can kind of play around with this a bunch because it lets us decide how we want the moon to affect us. For reference, when you're getting ready to go, as you come in and you're getting ready to fly to the moon, you can actually do this without a maneuver. We're going to point the ship at our prograde marker, and we're going to wait for that as the moon starts to rise over the limb of the planet. And all we're going to do is we're going to start burning. So, turning on the engines, and I'm concerned about this amount of fuel, but I actually know from practicing it that it's going to be okay. We're going to be fine. Even though it seems like not a lot, we're going to be able to get all the way around the moon and come home. I'm being cautious with the throttle because as our apoapsis rises, it's going to rise faster the longer it goes, and I don't want to dramatically overshoot. So what's the deal with the gravity assist? You can speed up or slow down as you choose, depending on where you are passing the moon. And I'm just going to say the moon instead of, whatever the body happens to be. So the moon. I sometimes have a hard time wrapping my head around the math involved, and it's not that complicated, but just I'll confuse myself and know the right answer, and then I'll question it. It's like, wait, is it I before E? Wait, is this an exception? No, it's not. And basically talk myself into being wrong. So coming up with a way to remember this, a silly thing that I will submit to you is going on the politely opening a door for somebody. We're politely opening the door for the moon. If we patiently allow the moon to go in front of us, we get a boost. We get a karmic boost for being a nice guy. This translates into a boost in our speed. You go behind the moon, you let the moon go first, you get a boost as it pulls you forward. If you are impolite and boorish and you cut ahead of the moon, you take a hit. Now, this is actually what we want. We want to take that hit. We want to lose speed as it acts as a drag on us. But look at what we've got going on here. We still haven't actually burned the same amount of fuel, but if we look at the arcs, just quickly explaining for future reference so we don't go through this frequently, the blue arc is the current orbital path that you are on. Then after an encounter, after something happens and your path is affected, we have an orange segment. In this case, it's our encounter with the moon. The third thing out is going to be in purple, and that is your orbital path after whatever has happened. So in our case, we're approaching the moon, we interact with the moon, we're past the moon. So this arc, and if you can imagine, that sort of a loop was what we had. As we're passing behind the moon, about 250 kilometers behind the moon, it's pulling us and speeding us up into this orbital path. Now that's kind of cool. We can take advantage of that to do some pretty crazy maneuvers where we could actually speed up, and if I stop here, remember we were at 41 and change before to get an escape trajectory. We're just under 54, and we're already leaving Kerbal because we got that boost from the moon. So that's kind of a neat thing to keep in mind, because it lets us get to places more efficiently, depending on, assuming that we can time things right. So, but that's not what we want here. So I'm going to very carefully turn on our engine again to cut in front of the moon. So now we would be intersecting the moon, and now we're cutting in front of it. I'm going to speed that up a little bit as it drops. So now we're going behind the moon, and I want to cut it a little closer. So we're going to speed up again, and boom, like that. I can pull this in closer, and on a real free return, you'd accelerate a little bit more so that your return path takes you into the atmosphere, so that you fire and forget. You set it up and you walk away and you're coming home. You don't even have to do anything. You're going on a tour and you're coming home as the atmosphere catches you and slows you down. I was trying to record this earlier, and sometimes the mapping of your path gets confused when you're sort of right on that knife edge of an encounter. At the speed that we're going to be going, right about when the periapsis is dropping low enough that I want it to be, we're basically just catching the moon. And so it's such a little fiddly moment in the math of it that it was flickering back and forth as if it couldn't resolve the effect. And so I just want to leave it like this because it's easier to look at and understand for all of us, and it doesn't give me a headache. So what we're doing here is this was our orbit, but we are being slowed down by our encounter with the moon. As they draw these arcs, it's in the frame of reference of the celestial body you are orbiting. So this weird little loopy-loop, we're not really going to do that. But if you trace our path forward, this is the point where we will encounter the moon. And you can see a little blue shadow here. That's the moon. That's where the moon will be when we enter its sphere of influence. When we leave its sphere of influence, we will be here on this orbital path. So it kind of traces a line about where those things line up. So I'm going to cut ahead and we're going to go visit the moon. And here we go. All right, we are about to enter the moon's sphere of influence. We're about to have our moon encounter. So when this happens, it's going to rewrite the path. It's going to recalculate the paths. So where we see we're in an orbit around Kerbal. Once we enter into an orbit around the moon, even though it's not a viable orbit because we're basically on an escape trajectory past the moon, this is going to become a clockwise arc around the moon as opposed to a counterclockwise arc around Kerbal. So we'll speed up just a little bit because we're still a few minutes away. I don't want to be going too fast, like I said, these boundary conditions. And you'll see, bang, there it is. So now we are in orbit, more or less, around the moon. And as we accelerate towards it, hey look, there's the moon. And we'll just sort of fall towards it. So this was cool, and Hudson is clearly in agreement. He thinks that this is fantastic. What I'd like to do, we're not going to get close enough to the moon to do a near orbit observation, so might as well do our observations now. The goo feels right at home. We'll keep that data. We will do a crew report. We'll keep that data. We're going to do a quick EVA. We know the drill. EVA report. We've observed. We've recorded our observations about the situation, and we get back in. I'm going to use one of these on our way past, and then we'll use these on our way home. But you know what? I think that's our... let's rotate the ship a little. There, that's what I want. I think that's our screenshot right there. Clear that away, take a picture, and get ready to fly by the moon. So yeah, next time we'll talk a little bit more about the moon and what we want to do on our following missions. I'll also explain why I've got some of the goo containers attached to the pod that is going home and some of the goo containers below the stack separator that is going to ditch this section. This becomes meaningful later and very important as well. So anyway, I hope that was fun. We'll see you later. Until then, have fun. Game on.